guys, welcome back to Minchinbury Youth Online. We're in week 5 of term 2, week 5. Tonight's a special night, I'm looking forward to it. We've got a special guest speaker. It's our senior minister here at Minchinbury Anglican. His name is Mike, and he's going to be opening up Esther for us tonight. We're continuing our series in Esther, Behind It All, where we're hearing about how God is behind everything that goes on. I'll talk to you about that a little bit more in a minute. But if you didn't know, Mike used to be a youth pastor himself, so he's got a bit of experience in opening up the Bible and helping us to understand it. So I'm really looking forward to that. Thanks tonight to Emily for reading the Bible for us and to Kobe for praying, and we'll get to hear them in just a minute. A couple of other little announcements. The first one is that you might have heard that regulations are starting to get lifted a little bit on churches and us being able to meet together and that sort of thing. We're working on that and we're figuring out what that might look like here for Minchinbury Youth. So stay tuned. For now though, you can expect to keep meeting as we're doing with this video each week and on Zoom. And I'll let you know as soon as that changes, as soon as we're able to meet together, I'll let you know about that. So stay tuned, but for now we're doing this. The second thing is, we mentioned last week that the leaders were cooking up some sort of video challenge, and I wanted to let you guys know that we've now successfully simmered that idea down. We've reduced it down to our challenge that I'm about to announce, which is we would like you to get involved in making videos at home based on the theme of perfect timing. Now, Esther is all about God and his timing, and you'll hear tonight in Esther chapter 4, there's a really famous verse where Mordecai says to Esther that perhaps she has been made queen for such a time as this. And so we're thinking about timing, and so I want you guys to be, as we all do, want you guys to be as creative as you can be around the idea of perfect timing. Now, you can make your video whatever you want. Maybe it's a domino effect, or it could be anything. Be creative, come up with something. And the way that you can share that is I have sent out a link to a Google Drive folder in the email to your parent or guardian or whoever the email contact is in your house. So you can check with them once you've made your video about how to get it to us. Now, we're going to give you a couple of weeks to work on that, so I'll announce next week when that's going to close. But work hard on it this week so that you're prepared when we do tell you when it's closing. But that's our video challenge. Get onto it, perfect timing. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Emily, and she's going to read the Bible for us in Esther chapter 4. Then Mike is going to speak to us. So enjoy.
So, it's me, Emily. I am reading a Bible passage for you today. It's Esther 4, verse 1 to 17. It's called Mordecai Persuades Esther to Help, and I'll just get into it. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he only went as far as the king's gates, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hatak, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend to her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hatak went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gates. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show Esther and explain to her, and he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence and to beg for mercy, and plead with him for her people. Hatak went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, "All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, Without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king sends the golden scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will rise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but you have come to a royal position for such a time as this? Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendant will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. Yeah. So that was the passage. I hope that it was slow enough for you. If it wasn't, you might want to reread it. Yeah. Bye.
Hey, Minchinbury Youth, Mike Smith here. Great to be with you at Youth Tonight, and I hope you've had a good week. I know for many of you, you've had to go back to school this week. Yay! Well, for some of you, it'll be exciting, but for others of you, it might be a little frustrating. No more Netflix or TikTok at home for you. You have to study, and real teachers are going to be supervising you. Well, this COVID season has been a defining moment for us all, hasn't it? Not only because we've had to adjust to online learning and even online youth group, this COVID season's likely to change the way that we do life going forward. At the very least, we're going to be the most hygienic society in all of world history, aren't we? It's been a defining moment, COVID. But of course, COVID is not the only defining moment that you or I will face in life. There are many defining moments, moments that shape who we are or who we will become. Decisions about your friendships, who you have as your friends at school, maybe even the subjects that you choose to do, whether you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Even these things can all be defining moments. And of course, the moment you decide to follow Jesus, well, that's a big defining moment. That really shapes who you're going to be and the life that you're going to live. And all of these defining moments, well, they can be exciting, but they can also be stressful as well, can't they? Because if you need to make a decision and you're unsure of what the future will look like, then it can be risky to make that decision. And it can be hard to do anything. But we're going to see tonight in the book of Esther that even in the hardest decisions that we have to make in life, moments that will really define our future, God doesn't leave us. He gives us some great resources and help in the midst of those defining moments. So if you've got your Bibles there, turn back up to the book of Esther. Last week you were in Esther chapter 3 and we saw Mordecai, Esther's cousin. He had a defining moment. He was asked to bow down and worship the evil Haman, and he refused to do that. And that came with a great cost, not just to Mordecai, but to the whole Jewish people, because Haman managed to convince the king to issue a decree to wipe out, to kill all of the Jews. Now, news of this Holocaust, this decision to kill all the Jews, comes to Queen Esther in chapter 4. What is she going to do in this defining moment? Well, grab your Bibles, Esther chapter 4. I want to pick up the story in verse 5. Read along with me, Esther chapter 4, verse 5. Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to her, and dispatched him to Mordecai to learn what he was doing and why. Now, we know Mordecai is a bit anxious and stressed about this decision that the king has made to kill all the Jews, and Esther's like, what's going on? Verse 6. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the city square in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened, as well as the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay the royal treasury for the slaughter of the Jews, and it was a lot of money. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa, ordering their destruction, so that Hathach might show it to Esther, explain it to her, and command her to approach the king, implore his favor, and plead with him personally for her people. Hathach came and repeated Mordecai's response to Esther. So Esther now knows what is about to happen. What's she going to do? Mordecai wants her to go into the king's presence and plead with him for the Jewish people. What's Esther going to do? Verse 10. Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to tell Mordecai, all the royal officials and the people of the royal provinces know that one law applies to every man or woman who approaches the king in the inner courtyard and who has not been summoned, the death penalty. Only if the king extends the gold scepter will that person live, and I have not been summoned to appear before the king for the last 30 days. Esther's response was reported to Mordecai. In other words, Esther saying, Mordecai, you think you've got problems? I got problems. If I go into the king's palace and I haven't got an appointment, I risk losing my life. You got problems? I got problems. Anyway, Mordecai, he's not too impressed with that response. Mordecai continues, verse 13. Mordecai told the messenger to reply to Esther, don't think that you will escape the fate of all the Jews because you are in the king's palace. If you keep silent at this time, liberation and deliverance will come to the Jewish people from another place, but you and your father's house will be destroyed. In other words, he's saying to Esther, don't think that you're going to be safe just because you're wearing a crown, that you've got a throne. We will make it known that you are a Jew as well, and you too will be doomed by this decree. Pretty rotten thing for Mordecai to suggest to Esther. He told her before, don't reveal your Jewish identity, but he's basically saying here, we will make it known that you're a Jew, so don't think that you're going to get off scot-free. But he's also a little bit positive as well, is Mordecai, because in the very next sentence in verse 14, he says this, but who knows? Perhaps you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Now, he falls short of saying, God has put you here, Esther, to do something for us. He doesn't say that, but we know that God has put Esther in this position to help the Jewish people. So what's Esther going to say to that? Let's keep reading, verse 15. Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and assemble all the Jews who can be found in Susa and fast for me. Fasting was often associated with praying in the Jewish culture. So she's asking the people to pray for her and to pray with her. She says, don't eat or drink for 3 days or nights. I and my female servants will also fast in the same way. After that, I will go to the king, even if it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went and did everything Esther had ordered him. This is a defining moment for Esther. She was a little frightened to begin with, but notice where she finishes. She puts her fear aside and she says, I'm going to step up. I'm going to go into the king's palace, and if I perish, I perish, but I will make a stand for my people. And so she encourages Mordecai and the rest of the Jews to pray for her in this defining moment. And you'll have to come back in the next few weeks to see how the story unfolds. Now, as I said at the beginning of this message, there are many defining moments that you and I will face in life as well. And there are some things in here that we can learn. Of course, one of the most defining moments in our own life is our decision about whether we will stand up and follow Jesus. And Jesus is the greater Esther. You know, Esther was called to kind of put her own crown at risk to do something for others. Well, Jesus left the throne room of heaven to identify with all human people. Esther took a risk for her life. We know that Jesus sacrificed his life. Esther said, if I perish, I perish. But Jesus said, I freely lay down my life as a ransom for many. Jesus is the greater Esther. And as Esther called people to respond to her act of sacrifice, Jesus calls us to make a response, to trust our life to him, to follow him. I wonder whether you have done that. That is a defining moment that we all have to face. And could it be that God has brought you onto your couch tonight and tuned in to Minchinbury Online, to Minchinbury Youth for such a time as this, to hear about Jesus and what he has done for you and calling you to put your trust in him? I don't think it's an accident that you're watching and listening tonight. Jesus is calling you to follow him. Why won't you do it? Now, I know many of you already follow Jesus, but tonight could be a defining moment still for you, a moment for you to step up in boldness in following Christ, to take a risk for Jesus. Maybe in the past you have been a little bit frightened to stand up for Jesus. You know, when conversations happen at school or amongst your friends, you haven't really let people know that you follow Jesus and that you love him. Could it be, remember this week you've just gone back to school and you're hearing this message, could it be that God has deliberately orchestrated it so that this coming week you make a bold stand for Jesus like Esther? That you talk openly about what God has done for you and you're not ashamed by it. Could it be? Maybe. So why don't you this coming week take a bolder stand for Jesus in your school? Well, that's Esther chapter 4. It's all about defining moments. And I think this could be a defining moment for many of you tonight. A defining moment to start following the greater Esther Jesus. Or a defining moment to step up, to take a risk and be more bold for Jesus. The question is, will you take that step?
We are at take 18. Take 18. Got a haircut. I can wait till youth group, the chat afterwards. Okay, files, thank you. So, this week we are praying. Right now we're praying. So, heads down, eyes closed, and let's pray. Dear God, I thank you that we can meet together on Zoom tonight, and I pray that we can have a great time learning about your word. Thank you for our youth leaders. Please keep them safe and healthy in their day-to-day lives. Thank you that we can all go back to school this week and that the restrictions are lifting and that we can start to see our friends again. And I think that we can go back to normal learning in school. Yeah. I pray that you can help the doctors and anybody else who is fighting COVID-19 or Corona, whichever you use, that they can fight Corona and that they can overcome it and that they can beat it. And I hope that we can just continue to see your glory in our day-to-day lives. And I hope that we can continue to believe in you. In your name, amen. Anyways, let's have a great time reading the Bible, already have read the Bible, or whatever. I don't know where this is getting put in the video. Have a good time with the rest of your night.
Thanks to Emily and to Mike and to Kobe for bringing us the word tonight and for praying for us. As always, guys, it's now time after this to jump onto our youth Zoom. Now, don't forget that starts at 7:30 p.m. So you want to make sure you're not late. That's in just a couple of minutes, 7:30 p.m. I've sent the link out to all of your parents or guardians or whoever the email contact is in your house. Now, one tricky thing. You need to make sure that you have the most updated version of Zoom. Okay, so if you haven't, you might want to really quickly check. We might be okay tonight, but definitely for future weeks, you'll need to make sure that your Zoom is updated to the latest version because you won't be able to join the meetings after that. That's just a Zoom thing, that's not us. So make sure you talk to your parent or whoever's computer you're using about that to get that updated. So we're going to jump on there, we're going to play some games, we'll get into our study groups and we'll hang out. I'm really looking forward to it. Hope you are too. Don't forget our video challenge, perfect timing. Looking forward to seeing some of those rolling in over the next week and we'll see you guys in Zoom. Catch you there.